Welcome into the Ultimate Cavaliers show. Mikey McNuggets, Jason Lloyd coming at you. We have a special guest joining us here in 1 second. But as always, today's title sponsor of the Ultimate Cav show is Living for We. They're trying to connect the health and safety initiatives in the greater Cleveland area. If you want to listen to their award-winning podcast, search for Living for We and Idea Stream on YouTube. We're going to bring in Scott Agness in 1 second. And I got a lot of questions for Scott, including how and what blackmail you have on him, Jason. But before we bring in Scott, a quick reminder that our show is sponsored by some of the best people in the business. FanDuel is a proud sponsor of the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. If you want to bet, you better be using FanDuel, and you can get $250 free in bonus bets if you go to FanDuel.com/UCSS. Epicor is also a proud sponsor of the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Easier with Epicor.com. It makes any kind of business easier to manage, to facilitate, to get the best results. One player is great, but a great team behind you. That's Epicor. So make sure you head over to Epicor, easier with Epicor.com, to make all of your business needs as easy as possible. And with that, Jason, we are thrilled, absolutely thrilled, to welcome Scott Agness to the show. Scott Agness covers the Indiana Pacers. And before we dive into this series, which I think is going to be an incredible series, Scott, I have to ask you this question. I love Jason. I've been over his house for Easter and Christmas. And when you texted us yesterday, immediately in response saying anything for Jason, I had to text Jason and say, what kind of blackmail do you have here on Scott? So, Scott, what does Jason have on you? Because I promise I can get it erased as quickly as you need me to erase it.
Man, nah. In this business, especially anymore, it's hard to find people like Jason who are there in your corner, and especially when more and more beat writers were traveling and such. Those are the good old days. I hate to sound like the old guy, right? But I always valued whenever Jason and the gang came over from Cleveland. And so, he's terrific. And so, of course, I'm on here. And I'm not just saying it because he's here.
I appreciate that, man. You kind of have to say it because I'm here, but I appreciate it anyway.
I think I said it to you when you were here for the NFL Draft Combine. I think it's the last time I saw you 2 years ago, I want to say.
Yeah. You coming up for this one? You going to be in Cleveland for this?
I will not, for a multitude of reasons. But the second one is the Caitlin Clark show goes to Iowa City, and so I booked that hotel and everything the minute it was announced. And to your audience, anything Fever and Caitlin, or you'll get this more than anyone, Jason. I treat Caitlin and the Fever like the 31st NBA team.
Yeah.
She's like covering what it probably was for you with LeBron. If she has new shoes, it's a new story. Yep. If she said something, it's a story. If she's doing something with her shot, it's a massive story. So I've leaned heavily into that. And then on top of that, Pacer PR changed. And so many things have changed.
Yeah, I got you.
Well, if you guys want to follow Scott, he is the Fieldhouse Files, Substack, fieldhousefiles.com at gmail.com is the email to get on that. Scott, we really appreciate you joining us this morning. And let's dive into what I expect to be a really competitive second round Eastern Conference playoff series here. Before you hopped on, Jason and I were going back and forth real quick on how good we thought the Pacers were. I think more highly of Indiana than Jason does. Jason very incorrectly predicted Milwaukee to win that first round series. He was wrong, so he's going to hold the fat L today. I was right. I picked Indiana in 6.
That was before
it was even better than I thought. But Scott, real quick, for anyone who's unfamiliar with what Indiana has done, basically since January on, they've been a really damn good basketball team for the last 4 months. And I think they're going to present some unique challenges to Cleveland here coming up in the next few days.
Yeah, for sure. And Jason, I'm surprised you had Milwaukee. Was that leaning into the Giannis factor and the Stars went out in the playoffs?
Yes, and that was before. That was when Dame had 2 functioning Achilles too.
Yeah, but he also hadn't played for a month.
Yeah, I know. And I should have taken into effect the Jimmy Haslam factor that everything he touches turns to absolute shit. So
gotcha.
I hadn't thought about that one all the way through. So yeah, I missed on that. I missed on Lakers.
Because going into that series, Jason, all I saw was Giannis, and I was like, all right, Giannis will. I bet he'll have a 50-point game. He'll probably win another by himself, but I don't think he has enough to get anything else. And then it turns out he didn't score more than 40 points in any game. So that was actually the surprise. And so they basically kept Giannis to his averages. Now, you were completely right on there, Mike. The Pacers had an awful start to the season, 10-15. A lot of that was due to injuries. They were using their two-way guard as a starting guard for certain circumstances. So throw out those first month and a half, 2 months of the season. Everything changed when they started to get a couple players back. The first was Andrew Nembhard on December 1st, and then about a month later was Aaron Nesmith. Those are their two top defenders. Those will get the heavy workload with the plethora of guards there and wings now that the Cavs have. Bench and depth, that's something they take incredible pride in, where most teams are talking about, all right, it's playoff time. We got to trim our bench or trim our rotation to 8 and 9 guys. The Pacers are probably keeping it about 10, and they could stretch to 11 and still have a guy or two that could play that will not in those games. Miles Turner was really solid in this last series, playing some of his best basketball of his career, and that's huge, obviously, coming into this double big situation that he's obviously experienced previously with Domantas Sabonis. And then I think that, to me, while the face of the team is Tyrese Halliburton, the steady hand and the leadership is Pascal Siakam. He's got the championship. He doesn't have to say a lot. You can throw it to him the post and he gets a bucket. He's really adapted his game significantly because he's not a run and gun player. He's the classic half court, throw it to me in the post. Let's get into our half court offense, but he's adapted and they've had a lot of this success.
Go ahead, Mike.
I'll keep firing. Listen,
Mm-hmm.
the one thing that worries me about Indiana from Cleveland's standpoint, and we'll get to our predictions later, Darius Garland's dealing with a toe injury, a big toe sprain. He sat out the final 2 games against Miami. He says it's a pain tolerance thing. We had Dustin Fox, former NFL cornerback, on the show yesterday, who said he had the exact same injury. And the only way to heal it is to take 2 months off. He does not have the luxury of 2 months off. He has 1 week. Indiana, in the first game they played this season against Cleveland, put the full court press on him. And Ben Shepherd was up there, Benedict Mathurin, TJ McConnell, who is my favorite backup point guard in the NBA. They got a bunch of guys that they're going to make it physical, make the Cavs work. And Darius is a big portion of the Cavaliers' press break offense and breaking down pressure, getting into the paint, and forcing teams into rotation. And if he's not at 100%, and if his big toe, which is your push-off toe, is hindered, and there is some pain tolerance that forces Darius to be playing at, I don't know, let's say 75, 80% if we're lucky, then I do think Indiana's full court pressure and physicality can throw a wrench into what Cleveland wants to do offensively. I'm not saying shut them down, but I do think they can hinder a lot of what Cleveland did so flawlessly, I guess, for lack of a better word, against Miami. Scott, when you look at that particular portion of this matchup, Darius's health versus Indiana's defensive pressure, do you think, knowing Darius is dealing with that toe injury, Rick Carlisle and company are going to ramp things up and make him beat them 94 feet down the court and put as much pressure as possible on that injured toe?
I think, for one, that's probably any coaching staff's default. Hey, let's test it. Let's poke it a little bit. See if this is how real is this issue, or is it just something that's on the injury report? Obviously, keeping him out, it's obviously something. But to the other point here is the Pacers have been pressuring full court and challenging guards and making teams work for it. We saw them even do that with Giannis, especially later in the game. And one of the big things is the Pacers want to play with pace. They want to speed them up. They want to really test your endurance and physicality. And right now, a lot of physical play seemingly has been allowed throughout. I mean, again, Giannis really didn't have one of those 20 free throw shooting nights. They were mostly able to keep him to his average there. So in this specific matchup, what'll be interesting is the way in which the Pacers choose to attack with the individual matchups, because I think you center, if it's me, on Donovan Mitchell. He has the biggest game potential. He could drop 50 pretty easily. And so Andrew Nembhard, probably Aaron Nesmith will get a shot at him. I love what the Cavs did, adding DeAndre Hunter and getting a little bit bigger. It's a player the Pacers looked into and tried to get in, I think, a couple of years ago in particular. But adding some wing depth and stuff gives a little bit more balance from what I see to this Cavs roster, and a little bit more versatility. And also, as the Pacers try to figure out these matchups, it's who do you kind of allow to get theirs, right? And maybe it's Garland with this injury, but we've also seen him go off and erupt against the Pacers in previous meetings. I think it was last season where he really jumped off.
The thing I always say about the Pacers is they play really fast and they score a ton of points. So you got to be able to go shot for shot with them, which the Cavs, I think, are more than capable of doing. But they have gotten better defensively this year. How do they get better?
The first thing is those two players that came back. Those are their top defensive players. So first of all, there's that. And then I think so. You're totally right, because the first month of the season they were like 26th in defensive rating, and then I think since the All-Star break they're something like 8th.
Mm-hmm.
And I've said all along, this team does not have to be good defensively. They don't. They just have to be average. Can they get to 15th? Or I think the Mavs, who reached the finals last year, were like 18th. That to me was the blueprint. And for the last couple of years, they had been 28th and 26th and 24th. That was not going to get it done. And so it starts with the personnel. I think the way in which they've tried to guard things, like in this past series, it's a little bit different than obviously in this one, where they had that wall out for Giannis and tried to throw 3 guys out there and either force him to split a couple defenders or pass it away. And then secondly, from last year to this year in particular, they tweaked a lot of what their emphasis are, in not trying to give up threes and those sort of things. What they are allowing has completely changed. And then I think they're just playing harder. I think this team has played a focused basketball really since the All-Star break. And that's it. Sometimes it seems too simple, but I think that's what it is.
When I look at how Cleveland guarded Tyler Hero, they overhelped, and they've had a tendency all season to kind of overhelp and force individuals, hey, you're not going to be the one to beat us this game. If you do that against Halliburton, 95 out of 100 times, he's going to make the right pass, and he's going to find a shooter in the corner or dribble it out and reset. I'm a little worried that Cleveland's tendencies over the course of the 82 games we saw in the regular season and the 4 games against Miami to overhelp is actually counterintuitive to the best way to stop this Indiana offensive attack. I feel like if Halliburton gets his 30, that's fine. But when they're at their best, he has 16, 17 points and 15, 16 assists.
Yeah.
Scott, I don't even know if this is a question or more of just an observation, but is that how Indiana is its most effective, when Halliburton is more of the facilitator than the natural scorer? Even though against Milwaukee at the end of that final game, he certainly found the rim and was able to get past that Milwaukee defense.
And the ironic thing to all that, Mike, was the fact that throughout the series, one of the things that me and others had been saying is Tyrese stop passing when you drive. He kept driving, and then he does his jump passes. He jumps up and then sends it to the corner. There was one game, I think he took 9 shots, and one of them was inside the arc. And, when he finished with 14 points or whatever it was. You're right. You're exactly right. They're best when he has 20 points and then a crap ton of assists. Yeah. He does not do the 40 points. He's not the big game potential offensive output from a point standpoint like a Donovan Mitchell. Where it's dangerous is, man, everything's rolling so well that the team has 38 assists and Tyrese has 16 of them with 1 turnover. That's when it's a really good night. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Cavaliers here tried to throw some junk defenses at him. We saw that Milwaukee Bucks tried to push him to his left hand a little bit, had some success, but with crossovers and how quickly they want to pass it anyway, it wasn't that obvious or that big a deal. But this team prides itself on just playing fast, not having many plays called, and just piling up assists. And anybody can go off at any time.
Well, if we're talking about Halliburton, we have to mention what happened at the end of that series.
Yeah.
Will John be watching these games from a suite in the upper deck, or what happened with that?
Right.
I mean, that was just crazy.
It was, and I got my phone pulled out because I'm writing my story after we get off here. I talked with John yesterday afternoon, and his biggest thing he kept stressing was, go watch the full video. Go watch the full video. I didn't intimidate him. I like Giannis. I love Giannis. I'm not trying to intimidate him. It was a combination of, yes, he was totally in the wrong. You cannot be on the court. I don't think he was as much trying to talk at Giannis as it was a monkey kind of off his family's back. Like, they're from Wisconsin. That is their home state team. The first time he touched the ball, Tyrese, he got booed. Throughout the series, he heard overrated chants. I mean, I tried to put myself a little bit in that position, and you would just be so frustrated, disgusted, annoyed. Now, that said, on the other side of it, it's like, we know you can kind of go anywhere at the field house, but like, what are you doing on the court? Leave that to Ty and his teammates. He is literally right there courtside every game. He doesn't need to move far, but yeah, he goes, quote, you hear overrated, you hear all this good stuff coming from there. Now here is the proof that he's not. And now he's trying to say, I'm trying to let it go for my family's sake. Let's move on. Let's keep it moving.
Yeah.
Let's get the focus on the Pacers and their win. But for obvious reasons, it's a story. But Jason, I did laugh when you had a couple of the debate shows come out. He should never attend a game ever again.
That's crazy.
He didn't do anything from a threatening standpoint. Was he in the wrong? Absolutely. If it's me, to your point, I'm just saying no courtside seats the rest of the season. Is that 4 games or 2 games, or is that 2 more series to be determined? But you're not removing him. He's also the franchise star's dad, which obviously gives him more leeway.
Exactly. The thing that, you actually explained it well, because the thing that I didn't understand was, I mean, the Pacers won the in-season tournament. Like, they've been to the conference finals. It's not like this was a first series win for them. But the point, I guess I didn't realize some of the crap that he was taking from Wisconsin people. So that explains it a little bit more. Just a weird scene. No, of course he shouldn't be banned. The Pacers are in a bad spot because it's their best player. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? You don't want, I mean, it's a reality that fans don't want to hear, but like, small market teams have to be very careful in how they deal with their star players. The last thing you want to do is piss off Tyrese over this. So let the league handle it.
Yep.
If the league tell him he can't sit courtside for the rest of the postseason, I think that's perfectly acceptable. Put him in the second or third row and be done with it and move on.
Well, here's actually more. Last offseason, or not last time at this time of year, he had some like neck spinal fusion surgery, such. He had one of those things like you just were in a bad car accident, neck brace, walking around, and everybody was worried. What the heck happening? No, I'm good. I just had to have surgery. Well, to that point, last postseason, he sat up in the handicap section far away from the basket. Just move him back there.
Yeah, exactly.
All is dandy, no big deal.
Yeah.
And you're exactly right. You can't put the team in this situation because it's a lose-lose for them if they penalize the star player. And on top of that, the worst thing, if you're the team, is you don't want this to be another thing Ty's thinking about, right? In the postseason, forget about tickets. If you need ticket issues, come to us before the series. We'll figure it out and be done.
Right.
You don't want him out there looking around or trying to figure out that sort of thing. So I hope now going into this weekend, we've all said what we need to say about John Halliburton and can focus then on the game at hand, as it should be.
Yeah.
Scott, I have the most important question of the show coming up after a quick word here from one of our sponsors, Monarch Money. Guys, if you don't have Monarch Money on your phone, what are you doing? It's so easy to lose track of your money between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment. But that's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. It's not just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center where you can track all of your accounts, investments, and spendings in one place. So you stop managing your money and start building wealth. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That is monarchmoney.com. Promo code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. Scott, when you look at the Cavs roster, you obviously have Donovan and Evan Mobley, 2 guys that are going to make the All-NBA team this season. You have Darius Garland, who's been an All-Star. You have Jared Allen, who's been an All-Star. You have DeAndre Hunter, you mentioned. But what is Indiana's plan to stop Ty Jerome? The single biggest X factor and should have been 6th man of the year.
It's funny, guys. I do a post-game show after every single Pacers game, and one of the couple big questions were, so I'm actually kind of worried about Ty Jerome.
You should be.
He might be able. Those were what fans were thinking. They're sitting there, hey, he could easily go off and erupt. And, the Pacers bench can do its thing. But if they get a potent scorer like Jerome just going off like this, that changes things a little bit and probably rethinks what Carlisle has with his rotations that he tries to stick to and those sort of things. So, no, as much as we're making light of it, I am very serious. And, yeah, I think a guy like Ty could absolutely go off and at least carry the Cavs or carry them in a half for a game or two.
He's been incredible. Like, if you haven't been locked into the Cavs this season, Ty has been, and I say this in the utmost sincere way, like the best story in basketball, going from a guy who was out on the court last year, had been a complete journeyman, to being, in my opinion, the most impactful minute-by-minute bench player in the NBA. I sat down with Ty last week one-on-one and talked to him about his floater and how he gets to his spots in such unique ways. And he is a matchup nightmare. And if you're not used to defending a player like that, he can come in and for 4 or 5 minute stretches be the best player on the court and have one of those swings. The Cavs bench all season, I've been saying, is their superpower. Like when they take out that first unit, they bring in DeAndre Hunter and Ty Jerome, and Sam Merrill's been playing awesome. But Indiana's got a hell of a bench too here, Scott. And unlike against Miami, and unlike I think against most teams that they would match up with, Indiana goes 8, 9, 10, even 11 deep sometimes. And I don't think that superpower Cleveland has with their second unit, I'd still take it over Indiana's bench, but I don't think it's a big stretch to say Indiana's right in that same tier.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder if they'll essentially kind of cancel each other out and give neither one maybe this advantage in this one. For the Pacers standpoint, it could be Obi Toppin. TJ McConnell, he had a brilliant game against the Cavs a couple of years ago. I think it was a triple-double, if I remember right, or it was like a 15-steal game, something like that in the Cavaliers. And I also remember specifically their first road game last season. TJ starts out of the rotation. And in game 2, after the first quarter in Cleveland, I think they're down like 20. So Rick changes everything. He's like, all right, well, we need TJ, his burst of energy, him to change the game. He went in there. I'm pretty sure they won the game, and he hadn't been out of the rotation ever since. So that's the fun story probably about TJ coming back to Cleveland, is at a time when he maybe thought, here comes some professional adversity once again. He completely disrupted that with what he's doing. Ben Shepherd's a guy they lean on for a high motor and for threes and Ds. Very simplistic. He's very high IQ. You know exactly what you're getting. Whereas Jarris Walker, he has more of the length, the athleticism. His shots really developed into a 40% three-point shooter, but he still gambles a little bit on defense. He's just a second-year player, but he is a guy they could throw with size to maybe give a guy a different look. They did that with Giannis several different times, and I thought he did pretty well considering it was his first significant minutes on Giannis.
McConnell had 16, 13, and 10 steals back in 21 against Cleveland. And he was 8 of 8.
The steals, the triple-double with steals. That's what it was.
Wow. When was that? I don't remember that. 2021?
21. It's been a while, but Jason, before you chime in, I got to follow up on that. Who will Cavs fans hate the most at the end of the series? Scott, McConnell, Mathurin, or Nembhard?
I'll say Mathurin because he's got a little edge to him right now. We've seen him have to be restrained in this last series a couple times. We talked about John Halliburton. We talked, Giannis had a little interaction with Mathurin that caused a little, I don't even know what we call it anymore. It's not an altercation even, just talking junk. To the point where then Pacers top assistant coach Lloyd Pierce, hey, Ben, we're going back to the locker room. I'm not even letting this get any further. And there were a couple times this season. The one person you left out of that is Tyrese. And why I mention him is I also think WWE was recently there. Fans need to know he is very much a WWE guy. And what I mean by that, too, is he leans into various things. Like, I don't understand what it necessarily means, but he wore Undertaker player edition shoes last game. I think Undertaker was the one that woke up from the dead and finished the guy off. He's leaning into that. When he hears the overrated chants, first of all, it does hurt him. I guarantee it. It would hurt any of us. But then I think he's spinning that forward and going, oh, okay. And then here we go, and uses that as a little bit of motivation. So he's going to find somebody in the crowd. I've seen it. And use that if he's not playing well and be like, all right, this guy just lost you guys the game. He absolutely will do that. And so my number one would be Ty, but then amongst your three, I would go with Mathurin.
So how does Indiana win this series? What has to happen for the Pacers to win?
Man, that's a tough one. This Cavs team, I just like how they've played all season. I like how it's not just stacking wins, it's stacking them in a row. I thought that was really impressive from what I saw throughout the series. I wasn't able to watch much of this last series, but clearly I didn't miss too much just yet with the Miami Heat with those beatdowns. But to me, it starts with preventing that big game eruption from any of those guys, but especially Donovan Mitchell. I think that's when they're in big trouble. If you see him handle that. I think also I wonder about the inside play. I really do, because one of the big storylines, I talked about injuries earlier in the season. It doesn't get much worse than one of your backup centers and James Wiseman suffering a torn Achilles 5 minutes into his stint with the Pacers on game 1. And then 10 days later, their backup big Isaiah Jackson suffering the same exact injury. And so they're down to backup bigs that weren't even on the roster to start the season. And so Thomas Bryant's done a solid job. We haven't seen much from Tony Bradley, but if Miles Turner gets in trouble with fouls, they're going to have to get creative here from the Pacers standpoint, and you'll see them play small. I almost wonder if they'll lean into going small, maybe a little bit more with a Siakam or Obi Toppin at the 5, for example, because then, Miles sitting there with 3 fouls in the second quarter and Allen and Mobley going off. That deeply concerns me too going into this series.
Who's your X factor, Scott? If there's one player either side that you think will determine the winner of the second round series, who would you put that X factor label on?
I'll take the Pacers side of it, and I'll say Pascal Siakam, because again, he's the steady hand here. He played very well throughout the last series, except for kind of the last game. So I'm curious how he'll go into this series and try to insert himself there. He's very much a play within the flow of the offense and the team. But man, there's so many times when he just needs to take over, or they can't buy a bucket and they've, it's a 4-minute drought where they can just throw it into him and he can assert himself and help them win a couple games. You assume then Ty can get you one, and then a role player could get them another. So if the Pacers have deep success, I think it's because of Pascal Siakam.
I think there's a couple different options. I think Siakam obviously is a great answer. Halliburton from the Cavs side. Mm-hmm. It's been Evan Mobley for Jason and I all season. I don't think there's been a Cavs show that has had more stock invested in Evan Mobley, who has cashed out better than Jason. Listen, if Evan Mobley stock that we own was real stock, I'd be living in a house like Jason's right now instead of a single-bedroom apartment.
You and me both.
In downtown Cleveland. To me, how Indiana tries to guard Evan, whether they go small and try to force him to beat him with twos, if they go big and lean into him being a three-point shooter, which he knocked down a couple against Miami, but that series had little to no stakes. So we still have to see Evan hit him in the playoffs before we can determine for real or not whether he's a playoff three-point shooter or not. To me, he's been the X factor for them to reach their full potential this season. He took this giant leap forward, and how Indiana decides to try and play with that matchup is going to be fascinating to me, because they don't have a true, they could put Turner on him, but then it's Siakam or someone smaller on Allen. I would assume Turner would start on Allen. And Scott, how do you see Indiana with that matchup? Would it be Siakam? Do you think they'd go with someone smaller to try and get up and frustrate Evan, make it harder for him to attack off the dribble? I'm just curious from your perspective. What do you think?
I think what they'll want to do is put Miles on Jared, presumably, to keep him around the basket. The last thing you want to do is Evan spaced out to the corner or out on the wing. That moves Miles away from the basket. And I say that because while they're not as dependent on Miles, the previous iterations of this team has basically been, we're not any individual good defenders, so we're going to funnel everyone to Miles and he'll handle it there at the rim. Now they've gotten away from that, thankfully, and they've gotten better point of attack defenders and are working on that. But Nembhard and Nesmith are the two guys there out on the perimeter. So for those reasons here, as we're spitballing it, I feel like he's got to be the one that'll match up on Jared Allen and really allow him to take care of that inside as best as he can. And he's not a big rebounder. Miles is not going to be a guy that pulls down 12 rebounds, but his biggest thing is if he can protect the basket and then block out his guys so that Jared doesn't get the rebound and anyone else does, will be the thing he'll be emphasizing the most.
Two ways that teams try to attack the Cavs defensively is, one, they hunt Darius, and two, they try and get Evan out of the paint defensively. It's pretty cut and dried how you can attack Darius in the series. How do you get Evan out of the lane?
Yeah. I think it's one of those, they're not a team that really plays a ton of zone. They are willing to. And I mentioned that because years ago, this was a Pacers franchise that almost refused to play zone when Dan Burke was kind of the defensive coordinator, and that was the Frank Vogel and Nate McMillan iterations of that team. But they have been leaning more into that. And by the way, while I'm thinking about it, I should note the cool thing that the Pacers' essential defensive coordinator is Jenny Busick, whose WNBA career was there in Cleveland with the Cleveland Rockers. So that's kind of a cool thing I got to imagine for her coming back to Cleveland there. But I think you will see, to your point, Jason, I think you will see a little bit zone, but nothing substantial. Just they like to throw some junk defenses in there to try to reshape the game. And then I think they have been productive in some of their smaller lineups. So I think that's something they'll have to consider there, because it's one of those, do you try to force the other team to match down to you, or do you try to match up to them, right?
Yeah.
And I think if you're the Pacers early on, I'd like to see usually Siakam's the first guy pulled out of the game. They bring in Obi Toppin. Maybe then you make another substitution. You slide Siakam or Obi Toppin down to that 5 spot. Those would be the interesting moves there. But yeah, that's just a tough question. I think that the Pacers will have to answer here over the next 3 days. And to Mike's point earlier on with injuries and such, the good news is these teams have a substantial time before this series. So that allows some downtime there. From the Pacers standpoint, Mathern's dealing with a bruised abdomen. Aaron Nesmith dealing with a sore lower back. And from both sides, those are all 3 significant players. So I do like the fact that there is good time here between the series.
It's time to make our predictions for the series, and our predictions are brought to us by Buckeye State Credit Union. If you're unfamiliar with them, let me introduce you to the financial friend you didn't know you needed until right now. Buckeye State Credit Union is a local brand offering a wide range of products. They have some of the lowest rates around and are committed to serving Northeast Ohio. Their Cleveland location is in Shaker Heights, but they have 5 brick-and-mortar locations across the state. Basically, Buckeye State Credit Union is here to make your life as easy as possible. They make banking more convenient, always putting the customer first, so you leave feeling cared for, valued, and respected. Their core values are simple: connect, simplify, and adapt. For more information, head to buckeyecu.org. Buckeye State Credit Union, your money simplified. All right, Scott, as our guest, you're up first. And thank you for joining us, by the way. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Although I see Jason and I sit here laughing because I very much want to pull a Windy right now. I'm not a prediction guy at all. And probably I've learned
you don't
from
have
Windy.
to make a prediction. Then by all means, you have the right to plead the fifth and skip this part. But Scott, I will ask the question anyway.
If I had to choose it, my gut says Cavs in 7. But it's very much I really want to see how the first couple of games shake out. But I've been very impressed from afar from the consistency of this Cavs team all season long, and I don't underrate that by any means. I think they're a team, you guys have probably harped on this, but they're a team that just has not gotten that coverage nationally in the that they has deserved, and maybe because it's a smaller market like Indy, because it's another Central Division team, I recognize that and sit there and I think any Pacer fan has to recognize and give them their respect going into the series, because it's going to be a tough one for Indiana.
Jason?
I think it's Cavs at 5, and I'll give Indy 1 game. They'll score a lot of points. I don't know the Pacers. I know they're better defensively. I don't think they can guard the Cavs. And I just think defensively, Cleveland presents too many problems. The game will slow down, become more of a half-court game. And I don't know. Both Mike, I think, is kind of along your lines that I think it's going to be a competitive series. But I think the Cavs will probably lose 1 on the road, and otherwise Cavs in 5.
I'm going Cavs in 6. I'll split the difference. I'm just disappointed by Jason Lloyd here. Scott, he picked Cavs over Miami in 6.
No, I said 5.
You said they get in 1, they might get 2.
That's what I
walked
said.
It back, and now Indiana, a significantly tougher opponent who presents they have more than one scorer, by the way. They have multiple guys that can actually put the ball in the basket, unlike Miami. And now Jason just saying, no, Cavs in 5. Jason, have some respect for Indiana. This is my fear, is that everyone is overlooking how good this Indiana team actually is.
No,
I'm glad Scott's here to provide some perspective.
The one thing we didn't touch on at all, Pacers had a hell of a coach.
Yeah, Carlisle's a great coach.
And from the Cavs' perspective, I mean, Kenny Atkinson, you go from Spo to Rick Carlisle. That's a tough way to open up a playoff series. So, no, I do have a lot of respect for the Pacers, but I did think the Heat were going to present more of a challenge than what they did to the Cavs. The Cavs are playing like they were when they were on those 15 and 16 game winning streaks. And I just don't think there's any team in the East that can compete with them outside of Boston.
Fair enough.
When they're playing this way.
Scott, we appreciate you joining us today. Tell the people where they can find you online, your Substack, and plug anything you got to plug before we wrap up this morning.
Yeah, just fieldhousefiles.com is where all my works is at. And then I do a live post-game show here on YouTube after every single Pacers game, and then do the Fieldhouse Files podcast as well. But, good to be on with you, Jason. Great to see you as always, my friend.
Good seeing you, buddy. Thanks for doing this.
Awesome. That is Scott Agness. Scott, we really appreciate it. that is going to wrap it up for the Ultimate Cavs Show. In 1 hour and 24 minutes, we start the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, coming at you with the Browns, Cavs, and Guardians. Scott, we appreciate you. Best of luck in Indiana. Good luck with the Caitlin Clark and Fever stuff, because I know that is an absolute wheelhouse and in a good way, shitstorm. But for all the best, he's Scott Agness. He's Jason Lloyd. I'm Mike McNuggets. We'll see you guys later. Have a good one. Go Cavs.